Hello, this is HorrorTube. Syracuse is located just outside of New York City. The town is lined with well-appointed mansions along lush forested roads. At first glance, it's a fairly wealthy neighborhood with swimming pools and tennis courts. It was here that the family of Robert Urin, a renowned gynecologist, lived. On the morning of September 17, 2012, Robert came home from a jog in the park. He started his usual routine in the kitchen, making coffee for his wife, then headed upstairs to his bedroom, but he didn't see his wife in bed. Instead, he could hear the shower running in the bathroom. Thinking she must be taking a shower, Robert put his coffee cube on the bedside table. But after a while, his wife didn't come out. Robert suddenly looked at his watch and realized that it had been over an hour since he'd gotten home. 8:25 a.m. Worried about his wife being so quiet, Robert headed to the bathroom. He opens the door and is immediately confronted with a shocking scene. His wife, Leslie, was lying naked and covered in blood in the bathroom. There was a lot of blood flowing, especially from her head, which looked like she had hit her head hard somewhere. Robert quickly called 911 from the phone in the bathroom, which happened to be out of service. Robert ran to another room on the second floor. There, his 23-year-old daughter, Jenna, was asleep. He yelled to Jenna that her mom had fallen in the bathroom and that she needed to call 911. In his panic, Robert realized he needed to perform CPR himself. His daughter, Jenna, didn't speak English and immediately dialed 911. After the call, Jenna ran to the bathroom and found her mom on the floor crying out in pain. It was a gruesome sight with blood spurting out of the bathroom. Before her 911 call was disconnected, over the receiver, Jenna shouted, "Dad, don't move, Mom. There could be more injuries." Paramedics arrived on the scene shortly thereafter, but Leslie had been moved from the bathroom, where she was initially found, to the side of the bed in the bedroom. In fact, it's common knowledge that when you find a patient with severe injuries, it's best to leave them where they are. The last thing you want to do is make things worse. And as a doctor, there's no way Robert didn't know this. However, Robert explains that he tried to perform CPR himself and that he had to move his wife to the bedroom to get into an easier position. As if to illustrate the urgency of the situation, the bedroom was already covered in Leslie's blood and she was already dead. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. Then the scene investigation began, and Robert told us that his wife had slipped while taking a shower in the bathroom and hit her head on the stone shower bench. In fact, she was anemic in life, so that was certainly a possibility. The scene monitor also determined that Leslie had hit her head on something hard as she fell, so her death was ruled accidental, and the case was closed. It was a sudden tragedy for a family. The 61-year-old was remembered by her neighbors as a vibrant and attractive woman. She had the perfect Southern family, a husband, a well-known obstetrician, and 4 thriving children. Most notably, Leslie was known for her warm personality, often doing charity work for those in need. So her death caused quite a stir in the community. Soon after, strange rumors began to circulate around town. The story goes that Leslie and Robert didn't get along very well in life. It was also said that Robert's hospital had recently fallen on hard times, and the family was in financial trouble. One of Leslie's neighbors, who she was close to, even said that she had contemplated separating from her husband. This is a story of a seemingly perfect couple who were actually having a falling out. 3 months after the incident, someone sent an anonymous letter to the local police department. The letter said that Robert was not a good person. Leslie was actually trying to break up with him. The police were immediately suspicious of Leslie's death and conducted an internal investigation. The investigation revealed that, as rumored, Robert and Leslie were not getting along and were actually living in separate rooms. It was also true that Robert was having financial problems. And crucially, on the day of Leslie's death, she had a big day ahead of her. It was the day she was supposed to sign a lease on an apartment to move out of Robert's house and live on her own. In other words, she was leaving her husband. Leslie's condition at the time of her death also came under scrutiny. Mary, Leslie's friend and the coroner, was shocked to see the autopsy report. Leslie had suffered a severe penetrating wound to the back of her head, and the impact had been so severe that blood was visible in her eyes. But this kind of impact is characteristic of someone who's been in a major car accident or fallen from a 20-story building. Also, the unusual shape of the wound looked too unnatural to be caused by hitting a bench. And there were abrasions on Leslie's cheeks and scratches on her nose and throat, but the rest of her body was clean. If she had fallen, there should have been bump marks in her back, knees, and elbows. With the coroner's pointed remarks, a reinvestigation was launched. The police revisit the scene of the crime once more to make sure they haven't missed anything, and that's when something catches their eye. It's the blood spatter all over the master bedroom. I didn't notice them at first. But when I took a closer look, I found them on the wall about 2 meters away from the bed. Unexpectedly, there's blood everywhere, over 100 spots in total. The bathroom is where the accident happened. Inside the room, we only did CPR. How could there be so much blood from just CPR? It didn't make sense to me, especially with the blood coming from behind the head of the bed, not in front of it. Robert has this to say about it. On the day of the incident, he was originally wearing a long-sleeved shirt, but when he was moving his injured wife, his shirt got soaked with blood, and he roughly took it off and threw it on the bed. And when he was doing first aid, he said it was splattered everywhere. It seemed like an incredibly far-fetched claim. There was another witness in the house that we had momentarily forgotten about. Their daughter, Jenna, testified that she clearly saw her father take off his blood-soaked shirt, just as Robert testified. On top of that, this time Robert's defense team came up with a new theory. This one's a little weird too. The hypothesis is that the paramedics touched Leslie with gloves on and then took them off, causing blood to splatter. What do you guys think? By the way, the bloody shirt that Robert was allegedly wearing was not found anywhere. Eventually, the prosecution charged Robert with the murder of his wife. On the day of the incident, he was enraged that his wife had left the house, and he murdered Leslie in their bedroom. He then moved her body to the bathroom and staged the scene. It was assumed that the crime spree had started in the dark, before sunrise, and that in the darkness he hadn't been able to wipe up the blood spatter on the master bedroom wall and behind the head of the bed. But there's another question. If the incident took place in the bedroom, why were the bedsheets so clean in comparison? This mystery was solved by the maid who worked in the house. She testified that the bedsheets on the day of the incident were not put on by her the day before. In other words, the sheets had been changed overnight. If that's the case, then we can interpret that Robert changed the sheets that already had blood on them. The prosecution assumed that he took the sheets and the murder weapon out of the house immediately after the crime and hid them somewhere. The case seemed to be shaping up to be about Robert brutally murdering his wife. But there was an unexpected twist. It was the testimony of the only witness at the scene, their daughter Jenna. Despite everything, she seemed to have an ironclad belief in her father, Robert. In fact, she actively went out of her way to defend him. Jenna's testimony was that she had been talking to her mom, Leslie, in their bedroom until 2 a.m. the day before the incident. And she claimed that the sheets on the bed were the same as those on the day of the incident. In other words, Jenna's claim was that Robert didn't change the bed sheets. Jenna tearfully pleaded her father's innocence in court. Robert, a party to the case, also pleaded not guilty, saying, "I love my wife, Leslie, and I still mourn her to this day." So what was the outcome of the trial? The jury found the testimony of his daughter Jenna to be unreliable and ultimately decided that Robert had murdered his wife Leslie and found him guilty. This is a tricky case because, aside from the normal evidence, there was no direct evidence, such as a murder weapon. However, an unusually large amount of blood was found in the bedroom and the victim's autopsy results were included in the mix. Justice Thomas, who presided over the case, said that Robert intentionally murdered his wife and then used his beloved daughter to cover it up. This was a diabolical act, he explained in his ruling. As the sentence was handed down, daughter Jenna broke down and cried out, "I was there, and Daddy didn't kill Mommy." After the conviction, Jenna and her family appealed to the judge for Robert's sentence to be reduced, and in 2014, Robert was finally sentenced to 20 years in New York State Prison. That left him a broken husband and father. The most disturbing part of this case is the testimony of the daughter, Jenna. She was convinced that her dad didn't kill her mom, which the jury ultimately denied. But what is the truth? Did she give false testimony because she had already read her mom's book and didn't think she could send her father to jail? Experts say that Jenna, who is in her early 20s, is probably in denial because the truth is hard to take. But there could certainly be errors in the police investigation and the law. This case is a tough one. Finally, as recently as March 2022, the appeal was reopened at the request of Robert's children. Against the wishes of the family, who were desperate to see him exonerated, Robert was found guilty and remains in prison. So what is the truth behind this case? It's been HorrorTube so far. Thank you.